The All Blacks and the Springboks have not held anything back for their Rugby World Cup warm-up match on Friday. My name is Mark, let's talk rugby. New Zealand v South Africa. This one is at Twickenham Stadium in London. It's on Friday the 27th of August and kickoff is 7:30 BST. Okay, so we'll have a look at the two teams, starting with the All Black selection. So front row, Eden de Groot, Dane Coles and Tyrell Lomax. Second row, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett. Back row, Luke Jacobson, Sam Kane and Ardy Sabea. Halfbacks, Aaron Smith and Richie Mwanga. Left wing, Mark Talea. Centres, Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane. Right wing is Will Jordan and fullback is Bowden Barrett. So, very close to a full strength team there. Onto the bench then, we have Samasoni, Takiaho, Tamaiti Williams, Fletcher Newell, Josh Lord, Tubo Vai, Dalton Papilihi, Cam Roygard and Anton Leonard-Brown. So, very strong in terms of the starting team. I think on the bench, maybe, it could be a stronger bench, but still some very decent players on there. We'll now have a look at the Springboks side. So, front row for them, Stephen Kitsoff, Malcolm Marks and Franz Malherbe, really strong there. Second row, Eben Etzebeth and Franco Mostert. The back row, Sia Khaleesi, great to see him back. Peter Steph-Toy and Dwayne Vermeulen. I think certainly at the end of the last World Cup, that probably would have been most people's starting Springbok back row. Halfbacks then, Faf de Klerk and Manny Lebok. Left wing, we got Makazola Mapimpi. Centres then, Andre Esterhazen and Kanan Moody. So Moody getting a chance at 13 after his exploits on the wing. On the right wing then we have Kurtley Arendse and Damian Willemse. On the bench we have Bongi Mbonambi, Oxen Che, Trevor Nyakane, Jean Klein, Orji Sneeman, Marco van Staden, Corbus Reinark and Willie Leroux. So, a really, really good side from them as well. As I said, both of them kind of picking pretty much full strength teams. The last time these two played was in the Rugby Championship in round 2 of that, and it was pretty much the decider, which meant that New Zealand came away with the trophy. It was New Zealand 35, South Africa 20. New Zealand were, I think, 20 points to 3 up at half time. So really great start from them. South Africa did come back a little bit in the second half, but in the end it was fairly comfortable for New Zealand. So, South Africa are going to want this to be a little bit closer because, these are two strong teams, and whatever about people talking about France and Ireland being favourites for the Rugby World Cup, France have now, I think, dropped down to 4th. New Zealand are 2nd in the world, South Africa 3rd. So, two of the top 3 teams in the world, and you could see these two meeting somewhere in the tournament. Whether that is going to be, it's either going to be in a quarterfinal or a final, I guess, if they do meet. But you could see either of these teams or even both of these teams making the final. That they're just so strong at the moment. We'll have a bit of a closer look at the two teams. So starting with the All Blacks. So, Eden de Groot, I think, has been, at least for me, a big revelation in All Blacks jersey this year. And along with Coles and Lomax, that's a pretty tasty front row. But I think de Groot gives them something that maybe they didn't have, even at the last World Cup and in recent, certainly not last year when we saw that, 3-game series loss against Ireland, and even in last year's Rugby Championship as well. They didn't have a scrum that could actually be a threat to the biggest scrums in the world. They do have it now, and a lot of that is down to Ethan de Groot. He's very aggressive in the scrum. He's decent around the park as well. Dane Coles and Tyrell Lomax, we know what those two are going to give you as well in the front row. Like Dane Coles, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of chat from him too. He loves to have a natter at the opposition, at the referee as well. So expecting him to come out with some clippable moments probably from there. Then the second row, it looks like, probably going to be the starting second row in the World Cup. Sam Whitelock, Scott Barrett. Two of them are like high class operators. I think Scott Barrett, because obviously you got Geordie and Bowden Barrett as well. He's kind of I wouldn't say lesser known, but lesser maybe celebrated of the Barrett brothers that are in the All Blacks. Obviously, there are even more Barrett brothers that have played in Super Rugby before as well. But he's still a really good player, and it's a decent second row pairing. Like, they give you everything you kind of need in a second row and around the park as well. Both very good. Onto the back row, then you got Luke Jacobs from there, who's kind of getting a chance at 6. I wouldn't say that he would be a starter in the Rugby World Cup, but Sam Cane, captain, last year he was in, had a bit of a dip in form. He's back to form this year. His performance, right at the gate against Argentina in the Rugby Championship just said that he's right back, bang on form, despite his trip on a pitch invader at the end of the game. And Ardy Sabea, like, that guy is just a special player, and he's the kind of player he never seems to play a bad game. When you see him, and it's just about whether he's going to be good or just out of this world. That's kind of the limits that he operates in. Aaron Smith, class operator, 9. Richard Moanga. We saw Mackenzie getting, some chances to start at 10, but I still think Moanga is definitely the better option there, and he should be the starting 10 in the Rugby World Cup. His kicking from the tee has improved a little bit, but, still got to get those clutch kicks, so when the pressure comes on, we're going to see that, I think, both 10s in this game. Then Mark Talea on the left wing, again, probably not going to be. You have to see, like, maybe the left wing berth, I think, is a little bit more open, because if Will Jordan is getting picked on that right wing, nobody's ousting him, at least not at the moment. So Talea definitely has a chance to stake a claim for that. I think, we've got Caleb Clark there as well, and a few others who would put their hands up for that left wing berth. So we, a decent game here, and he could nail that down, at least for the moment. Centres then, Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane. I was kind of skeptical about actually, both of them when they moved into the centres, but as a pairing, they're showing their worth now, and they both have the skills to do it. Ioane can give you that direct running option as well, but he can be evasive. He has the offloading game. He has the passing game. Jordy Barrett, has that as well. Like, both of them are big guys, which means that you can't, if you're deciding to double tackle one, you have to watch out for the other, popping up on the shoulder, ready for a pop pass offload, and maybe get in behind you. So that they're very threatening as a pairing, I think. Then you got Will Jordan, who just, it seems like every time he pulls on an All Blacks jersey, you expect him to score a try, and I'll be surprised if he doesn't do that on Friday as well. Then Bowden Barrett, second playmaker there at 15, gas to burn as well, and he's decent in the air too. So it's not like he's not like other 10s. I saw calls for Marcus Smith to play at 15 for England, and the worry about Marcus Smith will be that pressure, being targeted with a lot of, not just a lot of high kicks, but it's the high kick, like the Gary Owen or the long punt, and then a really good chase. So the fact that your opposition is arriving at the same time, you'd be a little bit worried about Smith under that kind of pressure. Barrett, though, he's shown he can do it in the past, and yeah, such a special, I think, lineup here. Like you're talking about what, 12 or 13 of, probably 12 of these guys you would expect to start in the Rugby World Cup for the team. Onto the bench then, you got Takiaho there, definitely going to be putting his hand up, at hooker. You got Williams and Newell as well, who, they can definitely do a job off the bench there too. You got Josh Lord, who didn't know too much about, but when I've seen him, he hasn't done anything wrong, but he hasn't shown that he's gonna. I don't think he's going to be challenging Whitelock or Barrett to start. Then Tupou Vaa'i, again a decent replacement. Papali'i could be pushing for start in the World Cup, depending on how things go really. And then you got Cam Roygaard. Don't know too much about him, but I wouldn't expect him to be the starting 9 in the World Cup. Then you got Anton Leonard-Brown, who was kind of maybe like a year or like 2 years ago, it looked like he was going to be the solution to the problem that they had in midfield. I'm not sure whether he's going to be 23 in the Rugby World Cup, because you might expect that it would be Damon McKenzie just for the number of positions that he can cover. But Leonard Brown definitely has a chance to impress from the bench. Onto the Springboks then. Look at that front row. Like, you got Kitshoff, Marks and Malherbe. Like, that just screams out starters to me. Whether Nienaber goes for like them being the starters of the bomb squad, you're going to get something special. Anyway, I think Kitshoff and Marks have been exceptional, but Malherbe is playing really well as well. But with Kitshoff and Marks, you have that breakdown threat, and in tandem, they've caught a lot of teams out. They're going to have to do that against New Zealand, though, to get themselves or keep themselves in the game. They don't want to let New Zealand have such a good start as had last time. I think they're going to be key to that in terms of getting over that ball and isolating people and winning penalties and allowing them to relieve pressure. Etzebeth back in the second row. That guy, if he's not the best lock in the world, he's absolutely in the conversation. Anyone who's mentioning other locks and not mentioning him in that argument, I think you've already lost the argument, honestly. He's just been so good for so long, and he has that dog about him as well, that he's the kind of player that you want him. If he's in your team, you absolutely love him. If he's in the opposition, you might dislike him because of some of the things he do, but I think you respect him as well, just because he's such a good player. Franco Mostert, then, I think there's plenty of players who are putting their hands up for that berth against, beside Etzebeth. I don't think that is decided yet. Like, you've got Klein and Snyman on the bench there, who both could put their hands up for that. And just shows like the depth that the Springboks have, like to have that many, absolutely world-class locks running about as well in their squad. Onto the back row then, we got Sia Khaleesi, who seems to have made a miraculous recovery from his injury. They're talking about generally, normally a player might be out for a year with the injury that he had, like after the surgery that he got, but he's already back. Hopefully, he doesn't have some kind of recurrence or some kind of injury because he came back too early. Fingers crossed that he's going to make it through the entire World Cup, because again, he's just a special player. Peter Steph Dutoy and Dwayne Vermeulen, like both of them, I thought at the start of the Rugby Championship, I talked about it before, they looked very off the pace of Test Rugby. Steph Dutoy, he was playing in Japan, and obviously not up to the intensity of even the URC or European Rugby or the Super Rugby or anything like that. So he had to build himself back up, I guess, up to that level. Then Dwayne Vermeulen, we saw very little of him for Ulster this year, and again a player who had to kind of feel his way back in, but they both seem to be up to pace, but there is plenty of competition for spots in that back row. So, again, a few years ago, that might have been absolutely nailed on as a back row, but I think both of them will be under a lot of pressure for their positions, and that's going to bring the best out of them. They're both really big competitors. Halfbacks then, Faf de Klerk probably would have been the starting 9 for everybody like a year or two ago. Now there's plenty of competition for that as well. We've got 4 9s in the squad, so there's going to be plenty of rotation throughout the Rugby World Cup. Manny Lebok, I think the debate between himself and Willemse has been settled now for who is the starting 10, but it feels like with South Africa that, even though Lebok has played fairly well, that he's only one bad performance away from actually being replaced, which is a little kind of sad. It's kind of similar to England where, if 1 to 10 has one good game, everybody thinks they're the bee's knees and they're absolutely the starting 10. Then if they have one bad game, there are names being thrown around that should be playing instead of them. But I think he does give them more 10 than Willemse does. Still kicking from the tee, like the guy can kick from the tee. There's a reason why he is the URC's top point scorer for the last 2 seasons. It's because he's very good at kicking from the tee. But we've seen that when real pressure comes on, he can miss vital kicks as well. So that's something he's definitely going to have to work on. Makazola Mapimpi, he's getting a run out here. Again, I think is another player who would have been a starter guaranteed starter a year or two ago. He's now under a lot of pressure, I think, for that wing spot. You got Colby, you got Curtly Aronson, you got Kanan Moody, even Creel can play out there as well. So all putting pressure on him. So he needs a good performance here. I think into the centres then, Andre Esterhuizen, I was very impressed with him in the Rugby Championship, and the guy really does look like he's really suited to Test rugby as well. He can be a hard running centre, but also he does actually have a passing game. Going to be interesting to see how he goes with Kane and Moody in there. Like people were talking about, Moody played underage or something at 13, so it's nothing new to him, but underage and Test rugby are very, very different arenas. So let's see how he can do there. He does seem to have the skills to be able to play 13, but it's going to be more about, positioning on the defensive side of things as well, how he does. And he's against, fairly formidable partnership on the other side with New Zealand as well. And we've got Curtly Aronson. Personally, I think probably the most in form of the wings that South Africa have at the minute. So I'd be very surprised if he's not somewhere on the starting 15, against Scotland in the Rugby World Cup. Then you got Damian Willemse getting a go at 15. There's always debate between himself and Willie Leroux, who was the starting 15. For me, it's Leroux, but you can see what Willemse gives you there as well. And, one being starting and one being on the bench. I think that's definitely going to be the way it is in the World Cup, but it's about what the order is going to be. For me, Leroux probably, is a little bit ahead of him. Onto the bench then, you got Bongi and Bonambi, Oxen Che, and Trevor Yinkanye. That could be a starting front row for most teams in the world, and it still could be the starting front row for Springboks as well, depending on who they want to start with and who they want to finish with. But I think the 6 front rowers that you see there are probably going to be this, for the big games, are going to be the 6 that are in the Matchday 23. Then you got Jean Klein, switched from Ireland, and the guy has just shown that he has the caliber to be a Springbok, and you could absolutely see him partnering Etzebeth in there, or even filling in for Etzebeth if Etzebeth, picks up a knock in the Rugby World Cup. Snyman as well. Guy is an absolute monster of a human being, and he's shown that again, he's coming back to his best. We saw if you watch the URC with Munster, that he was slowly coming back and having a little bit of impact off the bench. And then through the Rugby Championship as well, just building up. Like it's the guy. If he manages to get completely fully fit, I think he is an amazing option for them. You could play him definitely in the second row and somewhere in the back row as well. Then you got Marco van Staden. I thought he had a great season in the URC, and again, he's one of those players that are going to put pressure on the likes of Peter Steph du Toit, I think, for a start in the Rugby World Cup. And we got Corbus Reinark. You can't, with the way it is with 4 9s in squad, you can't even say whether himself and Faf de Klerk will actually be in match day squads, because you got 2 really good 9s in there along with them as well. But you would expect at least one of them to be in matchday 23s. And then we talked about Willie LaRue already. So how do I think the game is going to go? I think, New Zealand now, they've really have hit a nice streak of form. And South Africa have been a little bit patchy, but they're showing, even in games that they've lost, that, they're coming together as well. And you can see a little bit more of forwards and backs beginning to combine. One of my posters was saying he'd like to see, the way Ireland played, the Springboks playing that way as well. And I think they definitely have the ability to do that. It's just a case of, having the mindset to do as well, because something that I've seen with some of the South African franchises in the URC, especially the Bulls, and sometimes with the Springboks as well, is that when the pressure comes on, they condense down to, 10-man rugby and try and keep it in the pack a little bit too much when there's maybe opportunities for the back. So let's see if they can kind of break out of that mold a little bit in this one. I think it's the perfect opposition to be able to do it. But, with the way things have gone recently, I've got to go for New Zealand, but it's going to be close, probably just by the odd score.